Amazing woman CEO exposed as seat stolen by passenger. Incredible twist. Grounds flight. Jessica Hart gripped her boarding pass tightly, moving through the bustling terminal as if navigating a minefield. The moment she stepped onto the jet bridge, everything shifted. Today was supposed to be monumental. Her pitch to investors that could reshape her tech startup. She had fought tooth and nail to get here, rising from the late-night shifts as a waitress to the corner office in a company worth millions. Yet, as she walked toward the first-class cabin, the warm excitement of her journey turned heavy, as doubt crawled in like an unwelcome shadow. When she reached her seat, she was startled to find a man lounging in it, his expression dripping with condescension. "You must be confused, sweetheart. That's my seat." The unsettling familiarity of his sneer sent a chill through her, a reminder of the countless times men in power had belittled her. In that moment, she felt stripped naked, all her hard-earned accomplishments seemingly evaporating in the air between them. "Excuse me?" The words slipped out, but her voice betrayed her, a tremor revealing just how vulnerable she felt. How could she assert herself convincingly when the industry constantly questioned her abilities, viewing her less as a CEO and more like a token, a novelty? As they exchanged heated words, the eyes of fellow passengers began to shift toward the commotion, the rumblings of the cabin akin to a brewing storm. "This is unacceptable." She wasn't just battling for her seat, she was standing up for herself, for every woman who endured similar contempt. Yet anxiety twisted in her gut. She knew who he was, the investor who dismissed her pitch at a showcase, openly ridiculing her ideas. The scrutiny felt like a noose tightening around her. The flight attendants swooped in, attempting to mediate the chaos, but Jessica was lost in a spiral of emotions. Her family's unwavering love echoed in her mind, reminding her to stand tall against prejudice and ridicule. "You don't get to push me down," she thought, as the bitterness ignited her once again. This man wasn't just an adversary, he represented the glass ceiling she had fought against for years. The unsettling realization of her growing anger was palpable, trembling just below her skin. But here she was, challenged and scrutinized, vulnerable. Before she could gather her racing thoughts, unexpected support arrived from behind. An older woman leaned forward, her voice steady and fierce. "I remember a time when I was told I didn't belong in boardrooms. Your fight is not alone, dear." The words were comforting, but they also carried the weight of reality, a sense of camaraderie sprouting from a common battle against bias in business. But just as the atmosphere shifted, tension rising as discussions about equity spilled over, a voice pierced the ambiguity. The flight attendants announced that the plane was grounded due to the disturbance. Jessica's heart dropped. Time stood still, and she surveyed the bewildered faces around her. Her expression hardened as she caught sympathetic nods from other passengers now recognizing her struggle, yet doubt clawed inside. Would any of this truly count when her dreams hung so precariously in the balance? Would she rise from this moment and reject her insecurities, or would they eat her alive? The chaos around her began to fade, her future teetering on the edge of a blade. The stakes had never felt higher, and a profound realization struck. She wasn't just fighting for her right to exist, she was fighting for everything she had ever dreamed of becoming. Jessica's heart raced as she stared into the face of the man sitting in her seat, his smirk oblivious to the battlefield simmering just beneath the veteran exterior. Casting a quick glance back at the older woman, she felt a flicker of solidarity but also an unexpected shift within herself. This was not just a fight for a seat, it was her moment to reclaim everything that had been discarded, overlooked, and underestimated. The tension in the plane thickened as fellow passengers murmured and shifted in their seats. Jessica took a deep breath, reminding herself of the small victories and resilience that had propelled her this far. Every late-night strategy session, every negotiation that had changed the game. This moment, with all its raw intensity, could either be a defining detail of her story or a notch in the belt of male dominance she had so consistently confronted. "Sir," Jessica began, her voice more commanding than before, "you are in my seat, and I won't entertain being talked down to because you think you're above me." The firmness of her tone surprised even her. This was her moment to shift the narrative, to stand taller within the world that had frequently tried to shrink her. He opened his mouth, ready to retaliate, but she pressed on, fanning the embers of her indignation. You don't get to define my worth. I'm not just some token businesswoman, I'm the CEO of a burgeoning tech company, and I've worked hard to be here. So, either you stand up and show some respect or I'll get security to move you myself. His expression faltered for a second, and that flicker was all she needed. Just like every boardroom confrontation she'd rehearsed countless times, she felt an unfamiliar strength envelop her. Turning away from him, Jessica took note of the passengers. Their faces reflected a mixture of surprise and admiration, the tide of emotion shifting in her favor. It was far more than a theatrical performance, it was a reaffirmation of identity. As the plane came to a standstill, a flight attendant approached and, after a curt exchange about the disruption, she nodded towards Jessica approvingly. "You've got this," she whispered, her eyes filled with encouragement. Jessica felt a small swell of pride. She was no longer just a woman in a sea of men but a catalyst for change, igniting those around her to challenge the status quo. Once the argument settled, a bitter silence blanketed the cabin. Jessica took a moment for herself, lapsing into self-reflection, pondering what this confrontation meant for her future. She recalled how challenges had always pushed her. Each hurdle served as both a lesson and an opportunity for growth, a revelation that set her apart in an industry crowded by inherent biases. But as realization dawned, so did another pressing question. Was she genuinely ready for the responsibility that accompanied her aspirations? For perhaps the first time, she questioned whether her ambition outweighed the potential vulnerabilities it could expose. Did she have the emotional and intellectual fortitude to not only lead but also inspire? The plane was finally set to take off, the engines roaring to life as adrenaline coursed through her veins. She felt alive with purpose amid the uncertainty. However, juxtaposed against that exhilaration was a gnawing worry. Her pitch to the investors awaited, still looming like a question mark over her future. With one last glance at the stone-faced investor, she settled into her seat and whispered to herself, "This is only the beginning." But even as she tried to summon confidence, doubt lingered like a specter, taunting her. What would happen when she faced them, giving voice to the dreams born from this fight? The answer would reveal itself soon enough, forging her next steps in an uncharted terrain that demanded everything she had. As the plane ascended into the clouds, a whirlpool of thoughts churned in her mind, intertwined with anxiety and tenacity. Would she soar, or risk crashing against the weight of unfulfilled expectations? The next challenge was unavoidable, and it was time to confront it, not just for herself, but for every woman whose dreams had been confined to whispers. An emerging opportunity awaited, she would need to decide how to harness it. The plane leveled off into cruising altitude, and Jessica felt the swell of anticipation morph into a sharper clarity. The heavy thrum of the engine seemed to pulse in cadence with her racing thoughts. She had conquered her immediate battle. Now, the real test loomed ever closer. The weight of expectation filled her chest, but the confrontation with the man diminished in importance against the vast landscape of her professional goals. As the plane steadied, Jessica pulled out her notebook and began to prepare for the pitch that faced her just hours away. The pages were filled with meticulous details about her innovative tech product, insights into market analysis, and strategies for growth. Yet, amidst the well-organized chaos, she felt an unmistakable sense of self-doubt creeping in. What if the investors brushed her off? What if they saw beyond the veneer of confidence she so carefully constructed? The thought made her stomach churn. Confronting her fear, she closed her eyes and took a deep breath, recalling the initial spark that led her to become a tech entrepreneur. It was a moment of clarity, a realization of her own capability to disrupt the status quo. Every late night spent coding, every painful rejection she'd faced from investors prior, felt like a prologue to this moment. She was not just selling a product, she was crafting a narrative that underscored her journey. The flight attendant passed by, and Jessica decided to seize the quiet second to connect. "Excuse me, could I ask you for a moment?" Her voice remained steady, masking the storm of nerves beneath. Of course. The attendant leaned closer, her eyebrows raised in curiosity. I want to know what it's like to engage with customers. How do they react when they see new technology? What questions do they ask? The attendant's face lit up. People are often excited, but also skeptical. They want assurance that it will make their lives easier. The way you present it is essential. Warmth and credibility go a long way. Jessica nodded, absorbing the insight. This was her chance. She began to storyboard her pitch in simpler terms, confident that making a personal connection would drive her message home. Her own voice trembled at the edges, but there was an undeniable strength building within. What if she framed her story as something more than a mere product? They needed to hear how her innovation could change lives. Once the flight attendant moved on, Jessica felt empowered by those small golden nuggets of wisdom, echoing the tenets of leadership she had long internalized. Connection breeds success. It started to crystallize in her mind that her authority stemmed not just from her knowledge but her ability to connect on a human level. As the plane continued its journey, Jessica transformed her anxiety into calculated ambition. She reviewed her presentation notes over and over, endlessly refining word choices and visual aids in her mind until they danced like stars against the backdrop of a clearer vision. Hours melded into minutes as she sharpened her arguments and solidified her resolve. But doubt had a funny way of creeping back, and just when she felt unapologetically prepared, the door of uncertainty swung open again. What if her emotions betrayed her when she stood before that panel of investors, a blend of skepticism wrapped in suits? How many times had she witnessed men speaking over women, dismissing ideas because of a lack of physical presence or nonverbal validation? She suddenly understood that her fight wasn't over. The stakes were higher than ever. This was not just about winning over a group of investors. It was a chance to challenge every paradigm she had faced, to create a world where ideas were evaluated based on their merit, irrespective of their bearer. As she finally shifted her attention outward, scanning the faces of her fellow passengers, she saw a kaleidoscope of stories, similar battles, aspirations bubbling beneath the surface, and the oppressive weight of isolation began to diminish. She realized she wasn't alone in facing the world of men in suits. Together, they shared threads of resilience. Before she could indulge the comforting thoughts of camaraderie, the captain's voice echoed over the intercom, breaking through her reflections. We will be landing shortly. Each word felt like a herald of her upcoming confrontation, a steep cliff that required her to leap fearlessly. With her heartbeat sinking to the countdown, a final thought gripped her: nothing would define her but the choices she made in this moment. The foundation of her ambitions lay not solely in her innovative tech, but in her stance as a leader, challenging the very essence of professional landscape dynamics. She would rise or she would fall, but she would do it on her own terms. The weight of doubt recoiled into a reservoir of determination as she prepared to tackle the next challenge. In that moment, she understood, it was not merely about seizing opportunity, but also about daring to redefine what it meant to be a trailblazer in her own right. As the plane descended, she felt something awaken within her, an indomitable spark of resilience waiting to unleash itself. But as the reality of the moment edged closer, would she be ready to let it ignite? The plane touched down with a gentle shudder, and Jessica felt the metal frame shake, echoing her own internal tumult. As she gathered her things, a jolt of adrenaline surged through her, intertwining with the anticipation that had been building since takeoff. Outside the windows, the terminal glimmered under the morning sun, but the allure of success was paired with the fierce glare of uncertainty. Navigating the airport felt surreal, the crisp uniforms of airport staff contrasting sharply against her carefully curated outfit. Each footstep echoed with the weight of her aspirations. Would her presentation leap into the air like an aircraft or crash like a forgotten dream? She brushed her fingers over her notes one last time, each page a testament to her labor but also a source of anxiety. The time for conjecture was dwindling. In line for a taxi, she overheard two men discussing a recent tech acquisition that involved one of her competitors. Mention of names added fuel to her internal fire. Their triumph felt so brazen, yet every syllable lodged in her throat like a thorn. Jessica had been sidelined for far too long. This was not the time to recoil but a moment to accelerate. The cab ride to the meeting venue was a blur of city sights, but her mind consumed with strategies and rebuttals for potential objections. She prepared for this. It started as an idea, a mere flicker, but now it morphed into a robust narrative prioritizing authentic human connections over mere transactions. Could she embody that ethos when the stakes were at their highest? The moment loomed before her like a specter that required confrontation. As she stepped out of the cab, a gust of wind tousled her hair, a sign, perhaps? Should she fight against the tides, or let them guide her? Memories of past encounters with impassive investors floated to the fore. She had walked out of boardrooms before, defeated, but not this time. Arriving at the conference room, she took a deep breath. The panel was seated and watching her with a blend of curiosity and skepticism, their arms crossed, brows furrowed. She felt the warmth of the spotlight, yet the shadows of doubt loomed dangerously close. Could she even address the subconscious biases already in effect? "Good morning," Jessica began, her voice steadier than she felt. The story she crafted would serve as armor against the doubters. Her innovation was nothing less than a transformative force. She carefully laid out her vision, punctuated by evocative examples, leveraging her emotional investment to connect. But just as momentum built, the fear of being undermined surged forth. One of the panel members interjected, a hawkish gaze piercing through her confidence. "This all sounds wonderful, but how do we know it will actually work?" The familiar barbs of dismissal resurfaced. Each word felt like a sliver of ice lodging in her gut. Instead of retreating, a fierce clarity crystallized in her mind. "You know," Jessica replied, her voice rising above the doubt, "the question is not about whether it works, it's about whether you believe in the change it can inspire." Their expressions shifted, hinting at curiosity layered beneath skepticism. She matched their conviction with her own growing fury. Innovation thrives not merely on metrics, but how deeply we engage with the lives our work affects. Passion fed her confidence like fire stoking embers. This was her arena. Minutes ticked away, each second a heartbeat that pulsed with opportunity. The room began to feel less like a combat zone and more like fertile ground for dialogue. Questions morphed into discussions, building a bridge between her vision and their expectations. As the session progressed, the air shifted, laden with possibility. Jessica realized that acceptance from these men didn't just hinge on her pitch, it lay in how effectively she wielded her narrative, engaging their curiosity, and challenging their assumptions. When she finally concluded, the panel was silent, save for the sound of a pen scratching notes. Hope fluttered like the wings of a bird trying to escape captivity. But just as satisfaction edged closer, their final words felt like a sharp knife. "We'll consider this," one member said thoughtfully. The ambiguous finality was both an invitation and a slight reset of expectation. Outside, the bustling energy of the city flooded back in, possibilities and limitations twined together in her mind. The doubt of what she might have lost lurked nearby but didn't overshadow the subtle satisfaction she felt from standing her ground. Jessica's journey had evolved into something more significant than securing funding. It was about breaking open the doors of perception. Now the question arose, could she sustain this forward momentum? The stakes had transformed, but so had she. What could possibly derail her determination from here? The engine of her purpose roared anew. Just then, her phone buzzed with an incoming message, and Jessica stared at the screen, uncertainty creeping back in. She opened it, and her breath caught in her throat as she read, "We need to talk. It's urgent." Who was it now, and what revelation awaited her? The flickering screen of her phone felt like an electric jolt surging through her body. "We need to talk. It's urgent." The words replayed in her mind, and an instinctive knot tightened in her stomach. Was it about the presentation? Moments ago, she had felt empowered, boldly challenging the panel's skepticism. Now, a shadow of dread lingered, uncertainty clawing at the edges of her hard-won confidence. She hurried out of the meeting venue, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floor, each step a drumbeat of determination. As she reached the street, thoughts spiraled in multiple directions. Was it her mentor, Sam? He had always championed her, but lately, he'd been more distant. Could it be a personal crisis? The stakes of her professional life had always been intertwined with the personal, a truth she hated to confront. The crisp air outside clashed with the turmoil inside her, awakening a familiar blend of fear and resolve. She glanced around, searching for clarity in the bustling crowd, but was it clarity she sought, or was it an escape from the dizzying uncertainty that often followed her aspirations? It was time to choose. Confrontation or retreat. Seizing the moment, she crossed the street and entered a coffee shop, desperation and determination circling like hawks in her mind. She needed a brief refuge to collect her thoughts. As she waited for her drink, she considered the implications. Would the urgent message lead to an opportunity, a revelation about her project? Or would it be a setback she couldn't recover from? The brewing coffee filled her nostrils, heightening her senses while grounding her thoughts, a moment of normalcy in an otherwise turbulent day. Jessica? A calm voice echoed from behind her. She turned to face Sam, his demeanor comfortably familiar yet now layered with uncharacteristic gravity. We need to talk. The words hung between them, heavy and charged. She gestured for him to sit and braced herself for whatever news was about to unfold. I've been getting some worrying reports, he began, leaning closer as if the cafe could somehow listen. The company is changing direction, and I'm afraid our project might not fit into the new strategy. The implications loomed like a dark cloud, threatening to overshadow her recent triumph. She knew what that meant. Uncertainty could mute her newfound voice, and fear seeped back into her resolve. What does that mean for my presentation? Jessica questioned, heart racing. Didn't I convince them to explore innovative avenues? It's good they're intrigued, but this isn't just about your idea anymore. Sam's gaze intensified, dissecting her every reaction. It's about leadership shifts and market movements that we can't control. You need to strategize your next steps wisely. The urgency in his voice ignited a spark within her, a refusal to bow down to circumstances beyond her influence. I can pivot. We can refocus our vision. I won't just accept this as it is. Jessica felt the familiar stirrings of defiance swell up inside. Was this the moment to step beyond the boundaries they had set together? Sam raised an eyebrow, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. Sometimes it's not just about riding the wave, but knowing when to redirect it. Are you ready for that? Her heart felt as if it cascaded into an abyss of possibilities and decisions. Is that what this is? She probed, voice steady yet firm, as thoughts intertwined. A chance to redirect, to reclaim control? Yes, if you're willing to put everything on the line, he replied evenly. People may not understand your vision, but if you can't persuade them of its worth, you'll be sidelined once again. Silence wrapped around them, the vitality of the cafe blurring into an indistinct backdrop. Jessica's mind raced with possibilities, each one more surreal than the last. How to assert her vision against the tide of change? As waves of determination surged through her, the sudden intensity of the moment transformed her initial dread into an exhilarating challenge. She had come so far and stood poised at the edge of a pivotal moment. Whatever lay ahead, she would navigate it on her terms. The discussion lingered, but a thought emerged sharper than the rest: it's time to take the lead. In that moment of clarity, Jessica stood tall, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She sensed the impending clash between what was in her grasp and what was about to unfold would demand every ounce of her conviction. Stepping back into the world outside, she felt the electric pulse of the city beneath her. The pressing urgency of her uncertain trajectory met her resolute determination head-on. But as she sensed the potential for a seismic shift in her life, she had one pressing question echoing in her heart: who else might be impacted by this change, and could they be allies or adversaries? Just as her thoughts raced into the uncertain future, she felt her phone buzz. Another message. This one read, "You can't do this alone. Meet me, it's urgent." Who was trying to reach her now, and what new layer of complexity awaited her? Jessica stared at the new message on her phone, the tension in her chest tightening further, a fresh wave of uncertainty crashing over her resolve. She glanced at Sam, who remained in thoughtful silence, his brow furrowed as if wrapping his mind around his own demons. "I have to take this," she said, motioning towards the door. Sam nodded, his expression unreadable. The urgency in the message stirred an unsettling mix of curiosity and dread within her, beckoning her like a siren song. She took a few steps outside, the cacophony of the street ringing in her ears. She needed clarity, a spark that would illuminate her path amid the storm brewing in her professional life. "Who is it?" The voice on the other end inquired, no preamble, a firm edge to it. She recognized it instantly: Samantha, a former colleague who had taken a different route when the company underwent a massive restructuring last year. "Samantha. What is going on?" Jessica's heart raced, knowing the implications of an unannounced conversation could be both crucial and alarming. "I heard about what's happening," Samantha said, the tension evident in her voice. "Change is coming, and it's not just a shift. You're in the crosshairs." "What do you mean?" Jessica felt the clamminess of doubt settle in her stomach. "Remember that project we worked on? The one that got shelved? Well, it's bubbling up again, and it links directly to you." The revelation slammed into her like a freight train. Suddenly, the potential shift in direction Sam had alluded to felt tangible, like a live wire begging to be grasped. "Is there a way to leverage that? A way to regain control?" "Jessica," Samantha's tone softened. "You have to understand this isn't just a choice. It's a risk. You'll have to confront not just the panel but your own doubts. You'll need allies, people who will believe in your vision." A realization pierced through Jessica's mounting panic. This was her opportunity. She now knew the stakes weren't just about survival, they were about taking bold, calculated risks, and that was the essence of leadership. She shifted her weight, feeling the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "I'll need help to make it work," Jessica assessed, her tone steadying with each word. "I can't do this alone. Trust your instincts, and don't underestimate what you can achieve when you're decisive. You've proven yourself before, now it's time to show them you're here to stay." Jessica ended the call, contemplating Samantha's words. The realization crystallized: she would not just react but proactively define her narrative. She had the power to pivot, she could harness the wave instead of letting it drown her. With renewed conviction, she turned back towards Sam, who had been observing from a distance, his interest now visibly piqued. "What's up?" he asked, eyebrows raised. "I need to recalibrate our approach. I know we can align our project with the direction the company is taking. It's time to rally support and rebuild." The words slipped from her lips with surprising ease. "A revival of a shelved idea, bold," he remarked. "But do you truly believe you can get the buy-in you need?" "I'm not just going to persuade them, I'm going to show them," she said, already formulating her strategy in her mind. They won't just see an innovative proposal, they'll see it as the solution they didn't know they needed. As they walked back toward the office, Jessica felt the rhythm of determination thrumming beneath her skin. Her inner narrative was shifting from doubt and fear to strategy and audacity. She would cultivate relationships, rally her existing allies, and leverage every resource at her disposal. But she knew that the road ahead wouldn't come without adversaries. There would be skeptics who would challenge her every move, and detractors who wouldn't let her forget her past. Just as she settled into her thoughts, a text battled for her attention. This time it was from an unknown number. "You're not the only one with a plan. You're not ready for what's coming." Her pulse quickened, every nerve ending on high alert. Who was this mystery challenger, and how deeply were they intertwined in her unfolding narrative? It appeared the stakes were about to escalate even further. The journey of self-discovery was just beginning, and Jessica was more resolute than ever to emerge not just as a participant but as a force to be reckoned with in her own story. Jessica walked into the office with a burst of energy, her mind racing with possibilities. The earlier conversation with Samantha played on repeat in her thoughts, amplifying her sense of urgency. This was not just about keeping her job, it was about reclaiming her narrative, taking back ownership. As she settled at her desk, her fingers hovered over her keyboard for just a heartbeat longer than usual. The text remained unanswered in her mind, an ominous reminder that she wasn't the only player in this game. Ignoring it felt like accepting defeat. Jessica opened the message, her heart pounding as she typed a simple question: "Who is this?" A quick reply flickered on the screen. "You'll find out soon enough." The strange interaction washed over her like a cold rush of doubt, but she refused to let it spiral out of control. Her plan was simple yet audacious. She envisioned gathering support for the revived project, assembling a coalition that would not only endorse her vision but actively participate in its execution. "Hey, Sam!" she called out, her voice breaking through the dull hum of the open office. He looked up from his desk, curiosity etched across his face. "Could you meet me in the conference room? I want your thoughts on something." Once inside, with the door closed, the atmosphere shifted. "I'm thinking of reaching out to a few key players, not just for their support on this project but for their expertise," Jessica began, her passion igniting each word. "We need input from marketing, finance, and even a couple of designers. This is a chance to create something robust, something undeniable." Sam leaned against the desk, arms crossed, absorbing her intensity. "Bringing them in is a good move, but it's going to require you to step up your game. Their input means nothing if you can't sell your vision to them." "I know," she replied, the reality of it settling in. "I'm going to present the updated proposal tomorrow, but I'll need a captivating story for them. They need to see not just what the project is, but why it matters. If you can weave in some psychology, showing how it meets consumer needs and drives revenue," he began, his eyes gleaming with enthusiasm. "Exactly," Jessica interjected, the realization striking her like lightning. She needed to position it as essential for future growth rather than just a revival. "I want to frame it around innovation, not just recovery. The world changes constantly, and we need to adapt faster." As they threw ideas back and forth, Jessica felt the adrenaline morphing into clarity. Each potential highlight for the presentation sharpened her resolve, but the nagging text message lingered, ready to unravel her focus. "Jessica, are you all right?" Sam's voice cut through her thought spiral. There it was again, concern in his eyes. "You seem distracted." She took a deep breath, willing the tension to dissipate. "It's just I keep getting the sense that there's more to this situation, a deeper game at play with people I didn't foresee." "That's a possibility," he acknowledged, his demeanor growing serious. "But focusing on uncertainty won't help. You have to act with conviction." Jessica nodded, but something in Sam's tone triggered a flicker of anxiety. She had to be ready for anything, including backlash from those who felt threatened by her resurgence. Late that night, as she sat at her dining table, the city lights winking like stars beyond her window, ideas darted through her mind. There was a newfound strength in her strategy, but now it was time to prepare for battles that lay ahead. She summoned her research, organized her notes, and crafted narratives that conveyed resilience. But as she finalized her presentation draft, a chime echoed from her phone. A new message glimmered ominously on her screen, this time from an unknown contact but with a name she recognized: "Meet me tomorrow before your presentation. 9 a.m. sharp. You'll want to hear this." Jessica's heart thundered. Was this the information that would fortify her plan, or would it clear the path for more challenges? The very ground on which she hoped to establish her authority trembled beneath her feet, and she realized her journey was quickly morphing from self-discovery to a full-blown confrontation. What new layers would this day unravel? And how prepared was she to face whatever awaited her? Morning light spilled across Jessica's dining table, illuminating the clutter of documents and coffee cups from her late-night preparations. She could feel the tension coiling within her, a mix of anticipation and apprehension. The message from the unknown contact throbbed in the back of her mind like a warning siren. What could possibly await her at 9 a.m.? She stood and paced the room, her mind grappling with the importance of the day ahead. The presentation was not merely a pitch, it was her battle for recognition, a chance to demonstrate her essential role in the company. There would undoubtedly be skepticism, perhaps even sabotage from those who felt threatened by her ambition. Outmaneuvering them required more than strategy, it required conviction. The clock ticked mercilessly as she gathered her belongings. The offer to meet this mysterious contact loomed, but was it worth the risk? She recognized the duality of her situation. Hesitation could lead to missed opportunities, while a reckless decision could lead to disaster. Quite frankly, both outcomes terrified her. Arriving at the cafe where they agreed to meet, Jessica scanned the room, searching for a face that would either embolden her or send her spiraling into deeper uncertainty. The air was thick with the scent of freshly brewed coffee, but it felt suffocating rather than stimulating. Anxiety coiled around her throat, making each breath a challenge. Jessica. A familiar voice cut through the ambience. She turned and found herself in the presence of Max, a former colleague and mutual friend of Samantha. His smile was inviting, but his unexpected presence left her feeling unmoored. "Max, what are you doing here?" she asked, forcing a smile to mask her unease. "I got your name dropped in a conversation and thought I might lend my insight," he explained, leaning forward, a conspiratorial gleam in his eyes. "I might have some intel on dynamics in the office that would help fortify your proposal." Her heart raced. This could be the catalyst she needed, or it could lead her further into the labyrinth of corporate politics. "Okay," she said cautiously, gesturing for him to sit. "What do you know?" Max didn't mince words. "There are some strong interests that don't align with your project's success. People are mobilizing against it, and if I were you, I'd be ready to counter some serious backlash." The weight of his words settled heavily on her, and she fought to maintain her composure. "Thanks for the heads up. I'll prepare for that," she responded, a slight tremor in her voice. "More than prepare," he said, his voice low and intense. "You need to have your vision tightly woven with compelling data. Show them it's not just a revival, it's an evolution. Appeal to their fears, the fear of falling behind if they don't follow your lead." Max's guidance triggered something within her. It was a mix of ambition and indignation. She needed to step into the power she had always been told she had. "You're right. I can do this." As they discussed tactics, the lingering question of the initial message festered in the back of her mind. But now she saw herself less as a victim trapped in uncertainty and more as a strategist, honing her skills for the battle ahead. With newfound resolve flooding her veins, Jessica felt the tide turn. They wrapped up their meeting, and she armed herself with insights, precision, and a sharpened narrative to present later. Yet amidst all this clarity, an itch of dread remained attached. What if this mysterious text was meant to shake her resolve, or worse, sabotage her efforts? As she left the cafe, her footfalls echoed on the pavement, punctuating her thoughts. She needed to confront whatever lay behind the door of her future. But before she could even gather her own convictions about the day ahead, another text alert buzzed from her pocket. "Don't forget our meeting. I know things you can't afford to overlook." Jessica's heart sank. What more had she gotten herself into? It was clear now that she wasn't just battling for her project. This was a fight for her very autonomy in the corporate jungle. With determination fueling her, she stepped forward. Whatever awaited her next would define her path, but this time she would be ready to confront it head-on. Would she rise above the chaos, or would she find herself caught in a web woven by unseen adversaries? As the cold air bit her cheeks, Jessica slid her phone back into her pocket, the weight of that ominous message settling heavily on her chest. She momentarily paused, contemplating how far she was willing to go to secure her position and protect her vision. Each step toward the office felt monumental, laden with the pressure of what was to come. Inside the conference room, her colleagues gathered, the atmosphere palpable with nervous energy. As she settled into her designated spot, she scanned the room, eyes darting from familiar faces to the opposing faction that loomed against her. Their skepticism was evident, whispers of doubt ricocheted off the sleek glass walls. Today wasn't just about presenting her project, it was an examination of her grit. She clasped her hands tightly, focusing on her breathing. This was more than a professional development moment, it was an awakening. Beneath the surface of her self-doubt simmered a fierce tenacity waiting to be unleashed. She couldn't let the weight of external judgments define her, it was time to reclaim her narrative. As the meeting commenced, she strategically positioned herself to speak. The initial questions came at her like darts, sharp and intended to exploit her vulnerabilities. Yet, instead of faltering, Jessica channeled Max's advice, framing her responses with clarity and conviction. "We are not simply circling back, we are charting a new course," she declared, her voice steady, resonating with authority. In that moment, the accusations launched her way seemed to dissipate, replaced by an intense clarity of purpose. She articulated her vision with zeal, citing data that highlighted market trends and outlining a roadmap that spoke to innovation rather than mere compliance. The tide shifted as she painted a vivid picture of what success could look like. But in the back of her mind, the unseen threat loomed, the message, the unknown contact. Was there a sabotage waiting to unravel her efforts? The thought was suffocating but propelling her to keep moving forward. Just as she felt a surge of confidence, one particularly antagonistic colleague, Caroline, raised an eyebrow. "You really think our clients will adapt so easily? It's a risk we can't afford." Jessica steadied her breath. This was the moment to confront her doubts directly. "Risks without insight are stagnation," she countered. "Client needs are evolving, to ignore that is the true risk." Her eyes locked with Caroline's, a silent challenge passing unmistakably between them. With the presentation nearing its conclusion, Jessica sensed a newfound confidence flooding her veins. She wasn't solely defending her idea, she was stepping into her role as a leader. Those initial defensive tensions transformed, bubbling into assertiveness that shocked even her. The timbre of her own voice felt commanding, she was no longer just an employee, she was an architect of change. As the meeting wrapped up, the reactions varied. Some colleagues offered hesitant nods of approval, while others remained staunchly opposed, their doubts simmering. It was clear this was only the beginning of a long conflict, but for the first time in her career, Jessica felt she had not merely participated but forged her identity within the company. Stepping outside the conference room, she felt dizzying clarity and excitement accelerate within her. Yet, as the breath of fresh air hit her face, she hesitated. The text message loomed again. What if it was meant to shatter this breakthrough? What if it contained information that could dismantle her hard-fought progress? As she reached for her phone, a sense of urgency crackled through her. Would she seek out this elusive contact before the darkness fell? Or would she risk it all, driven by the glow of her newfound empowerment? The choice loomed, a weighty tension melding between determination and trepidation. Time to choose. Through shadows or by light, she would navigate the path ahead. Where would her decision lead her next? As Jessica stepped out of the corporate building, the sun was setting, casting hues of orange and pink across the skyline, mirroring the fiery spirit that surged within her. The weight of the text message loomed ominously in her mind, yet she felt a renewed sense of agency blossoming, a realization that she was no longer a bystander in her own life. Scanning the street, she recalled Max's insightful words, sending ripples of determination through her weary bones. This was not merely about presenting a project. It was about exerting her influence and reclaiming her narrative. As she walked toward the cafe where she'd arranged to meet the mysterious sender of the texts, Jessica allowed hope to drive her forward. Upon entering, she spotted the silhouette of a figure at a corner table, someone who didn't look familiar but exuded an air of confidence. As she approached, her heart raced. "Kate?" she asked, recognizing a fellow entrepreneur known for her trailblazing success in tech. "It's good to finally meet you, Jessica," Kate replied, her smile genuine but weighted with urgency. "I've been watching you play a dangerous game. Is that why you reached out? To help or threaten?" Jessica queried, crossing her arms defensively. Kate chuckled lightly. "Help, I promise. The backlash against your project is stronger than you realize. But you have what it takes to weather this storm. You just need insight you don't have yet." Jessica bit her lip, skepticism flitting through her mind. "What do you know?" Kate leaned in, her expression turning serious. "There are people in your circle who want to undermine you, and they'll use anything including manipulation to accomplish that goal. But together, we can strategize a counterattack." The urgency in Kate's voice fanned the flames of Jessica's ambition. "What are you suggesting?" she asked, her pulse quickening, every instinct signaling readiness. "Let us build an alliance. Other executives see your potential, but they fear the disruptive innovation you offer. If you can align with them, you can neutralize the opposition." Jessica's gaze pierced through the haze of doubt. "I can't just sit and watch anymore. I need to act decisively, not just survive, but thrive." Kate nodded, sensing Jessica's resolve solidifying. "Exactly. Harness that tenacity. You're not just presenting a product, you're presenting a vision. Frame it as essential for progress, and those who doubt will struggle to resist." As they delved deeper into the intricacies of crafting her strategic plan, Jessica felt like a weight was being lifted. Having a mentor in Kate offered her clarity, resolve, and direction. Their combined energy transformed apprehension into anticipation. This was the turning point she'd sought. Later that evening, her phone buzzed again, a familiar yet threatening reminder of the uncertainty she faced. Jessica hesitated momentarily before opening the message. "The board is watching closely. Don't attempt to play games." The specter of intimidation lay bare, but instead of curling back in fear, Jessica leaned into the feeling as a call to arms. Before she knew it, hours slipped by, and her ideas transformed into actionable strategies. By the time she returned home, she could feel the boldness coursing through her veins. It felt invigorating to reclaim her narrative, replace anxiety with strategy. Weeks passed, marked by countless meetings and late nights refining her proposal. With each session, she noticed herself evolving, her voice steadier, her arguments sharper, and her confidence unshakable. Finally, the day of the second board meeting arrived. Armed with the insights shared by Kate, Jessica entered the room resolved to outmaneuver her critics. As she presented, she felt an electric undercurrent of focus. Her audience leaned in, hanging onto her words as she made her case for innovation, outlining industry trends, user insights, and projected growth. When Brooke spoke up again, positioning herself as a challenger, Jessica remained unfazed. "You claim risk, but what of stagnation if we don't embrace change?" she countered, her voice unwavering, bolstered by unwavering conviction. At last, she turned to walk out of the boardroom, heart swelling with a surge of completeness and accomplishment. As she exited, glancing back, she saw approving nods. Even skeptics appeared to reassess her stance. Jessica walked home, the sun setting beyond the horizon and illuminating her path forward. It felt surreal. She didn't just achieve a compelling pitch, she had demonstrated resilience, mastery, and leadership. No longer trapped by uncertainty or belittled by bias, she had honored her journey and embraced her role. As her phone chimed with new notifications, she smiled. Each one represented not just messages but connections, affirmations of growth. The final text left unanswered would be her last concern. She had become a force to be reckoned with, carving her path through challenges. This was only the beginning. She would move through life unapologetically, armed with insight and strength, ready to confront every challenge head-on. And as Jessica stepped into the world, she recognized the profound exhilaration of transformation. Her individual achievement redefined her not only as a CEO but as a change agent in her industry. This was her moment, and she embraced it with both hands. You need to subscribe now to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure these stories keep coming. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to support this journey of overcoming and transformation.